What's up, everybody? My name is Shannon and I am still waiting for my Satyr, and today I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about Dark Disciple by Christie Golden. So this video is going to have lots and lots of spoilers in it, so if you want to avoid those, I highly recommend you check out my spoiler-free review of this book, which should appear somewhere up here. So to kind of make a long story short, Dark Disciple is about Quinlan Vos, who's a Jedi, and Asajj Ventress, who's a bounty hunter, but she used to be the apprentice of a Sith Lord, and they team up in order to assassinate Count Dooku. And the biggest takeaway from this book is that it really highlights that the Jedi are starting to go down a dark path and they're starting to forget exactly what they're meant to be. And the biggest takeaway from that is that Obi-Wan sees this and still can't do anything about it. Throughout the book, we're seeing Obi-Wan notice that the Jedi really are losing their way. The Jedi aren't supposed to send people to assassinate other people. They're supposed to be peacekeepers. And yes, they say that they're keeping the peace because this will end the war, but that's not how the Jedi go about it. They're not supposed to intervene in this way. And it really does make Obi-Wan kind of think about, like, why are they in this war? What is their place in this war? And he's seeing all this and he's making all of these observations, and yet he still chooses his loyalty to the Jedi Order over his loyalty to his friend Vos, who he sees fall to the dark side, who he knows could come back from it, and yet he still chooses the Jedi Order. And what I think is amazing about that is that it really highlights this, and I don't really want to use the word brainwashing, but that kind of mentality that you are locked into when you're in the Jedi Order. You go into it very young, you're taught the Jedi Code, these teachings from a very young age, so even when Obi-Wan grows up and he starts to see these cracks, he starts to have this struggle with what he thinks is right and what the Jedi Order is doing, he still chooses his loyalty to the Jedi Order, and that makes Anakin's fall so much more tragic. And I mean, I do think that reading the Revenge of the Sith novelization highlights that as well, but seeing it here and then thinking about how, you know, like, Anakin was his brother, like, Anakin's not just his friend, like, they were so close, and yet he still wasn't able to help them. He had been seeing these cracks. He knew that Anakin was going down a dark path. He knew that this was not the way for him, and yet he still couldn't help him. And it just really, really hits you, and it gives you so many Obi-Wan feels. Another important thing about this book is the star-crossed lovers aspect. So Ventress and Vos do fall in love. They are kind of your dark side, light side kind of people, but what's interesting about them is that they are morally gray, because Ventress used to be like an apprentice to a Sith, so she was a very powerful dark side user, but she brings herself back from that. And Vos is a Jedi, but he doesn't really like follow the code that strictly. He doesn't really have that many reservations when he starts to fall in love with Ventress, when he starts to form those attachments, and he definitely doesn't like uphold the Jedi Order with as much loyalty as, you know, we see Obi-Wan do. But what's so interesting about them is that Ventress is teaching Vos how to use the dark side, how to tap into it in order to kill Count Dooku, and she drills into him, like, don't let it consume you. She knows what that's like. She knows what it's like to be consumed by the dark side, and she doesn't want to see it happen to him, but she knows that he has to be able to use it in order to, like, achieve his goals, in order to get what he wants. And Vos keeps saying, like, it's not gonna happen, he's strong enough, this, that, and the other thing. But then this fear sets in with Vos, and he, you know, becomes so attached to Ventress, and he becomes so worried about losing her, about, like, this future that he wants to happen, and he becomes so afraid that the darkness does take over, and he starts to lose sight of what he's doing, and he stops communicating with people. About halfway through the book, there's this really interesting shift in the focus where you're not quite sure what's going on with Vos. You're not quite sure what to believe. Like, did he come back? Like, was he just faking it all, or is the darkness infecting him? And all the way up to the end, when you see that this fear has been inside of him to the point where he's willing to pledge himself to Darth Sidious himself in order to get this future that he thinks he deserves, it just absolutely breaks your heart. And then on top of that, you see Ventress, in order to bring him back to the light, sacrifice herself. And then after that, what's left? You have Vos, who has come back from the dark side. He is light again, but he's lost everything. He lost sight of everything he had because he let that fear sink in, and because he stopped communicating with those around him. I truly do think that the reason the star-crossed lovers theme shows up so many times in Star Wars and never works in Star Wars is because it's all about communication. And that's highlighted very well here, because Vos stops talking to Ventress, he stops, like, communicating what's going on, he just keeps saying, trust me, he never tells anybody his plan, and then you see the consequences of that. And it's so cool. Like, you see that lack of communication, that star-crossed things all throughout Star Wars books, but I really do feel like Dark Disciple handles it very, very well, and I absolutely loved it. It's so freaking tragic, and if you're a Reylo shipper, I definitely recommend reading this book. Obviously, if you don't want to read it, then I've just given you everything you need to know, but I definitely do think that that gives us some hints to where we're going to be going in episode 9, because it's different with Reylo. It's different with Kylo Ren and Rey, because there is that communication there, or at least there was starting to be. We're not quite sure where we're going to go with it in 9, but I do think that's the difference, and because of that, I do think we're finally going to see this star-crossed theme, finally and happily. But I don't know, we'll have to wait till 9 to find that out. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to hit that like button down below, and don't forget to subscribe so you can talk books with me every week. That is everything I got for you today, and I'll see you next time.